এসছে এসছে। 8টা 59 মানে 9টা।
Hello, good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to express my very much gratitude to all the speakers and participants on this webinar, inclusion of specific learning disabilities in higher education. This is the most important thing regarding our new education policy, which we are doing a lot for the disability. In this series, I would like to request respected advisors express his views. Yes, sir.
So, good morning, Namaskar and Jai Hind. A very warm welcome to all the participants here in this webinar, which is on inclusion of specific learning disabilities or SLDs in higher education. This is a very important aspect, and a lot more has to be done on this front. It's we are really happy that we have changed Inc. team along with some more experts to enlighten us and also the academic community on this very, very important aspect. The new education policy also talks about this and making the education inclusive. AICT on its part has also taken steps. Basically, it's a regulator, but it steps ahead and takes the role of facilitator also. So in terms of policy, we are there also to support the infrastructure that is required for persons of disabilities. Then we have schemes available for such students and even the institutions. Recently, we have initiated a program, rather a scheme promoting accessible education. And we propose to set up Office of Accessibility and Assistive Technology in select institutions which we are going to fund and develop as a role model for rest of the colleges. So this scheme is still in a very nascent stage, and hopefully in next few months we will see it fully blown scheme, and we will have at least 4 or 5 such model institutions funded, and they start coming up. So that's the way we are working, and definitely inclusion of specific learning disability is going to be an agenda within that scheme. So a lot of good things are going to happen, and we have the support of all our well-wishers and experts like the ones we are going to listen today. With those words, I would like to hand over the space to our experts to take us forward and enlighten us. Thank you very much.
A very good morning to everybody. Today, me and my colleague Bhavya from Changing will be talking more about inclusion of students with SLD in higher education. So we'll just begin.
Please carry on.
Yes. So we are here presenting Change Inc. This foundation has been founded by Ms. Nupur Jhunjhunwala, and we work very passionately towards inclusion of specific learning disability in the 4 verticals, which is school education, higher education, skilling and vocational training, and also inclusion at workplace. So today we are here to talk more about the higher education vertical, and we'll begin. So this is a very small example that we want to run past everybody. This is a picture. We have 5 individuals here, and I would just want quickly for somebody to volunteer. Who do they think might have a learning disability over here in this picture? Like, can you perceive that just by looking at the picture? So anybody can quickly just volunteer for the same.
This is number 2, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, ma'am.
Number
I am
two.
also saying that the second person, ma'am.
Second person, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. So we don't know that. We have no bearing and understanding of who might have a specific learning disability here. A couple of you put 4 or 5, but again, we don't know. All of us had a different perspective. From here, we come to this particular understanding of the fact that a specific learning disability is a hidden disability. It's an invisible disability. It is very difficult to look at a person and just by looking at them understand that what kind of specific learning disability they might have, or even if they have one or not. So therefore we come to this webinar today where we plan to talk more about it, understand more about it, and works towards their inclusion. So understanding neurodiversity, from here we are going to talk about neurodiversity of individuals. What do we mean by it? Specific learning disabilities especially include dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder. When I talk about dyslexia, we basically the issue over here is that individuals with this have trouble reading fluently or accurately. They may also have trouble writing, spelling, and with comprehension sometimes. When we talk about dysgraphia, it impacts the ability to write legible and with the required speed. For some, it also impact ability to put their thoughts in written form together. Then we come to dyscalculia that impacts math skills, including numbers, symbols, or use of function needed. And then moving to dyspraxia, which actually impacts an individual's movement and development coordination, including the ability to execute fine motor skills, like maybe something as basic as tying your shoelaces. Having said that, what we are seeing is that at least 1 in 5 people are thought to be affected by dyslexia. So that is how common it is. Today, when you go out, when you're in your offices, you might look around and you'll realize that every fifth person that you might come across, right, would have the possibility of having a specific learning disorder, which is dyslexia. So we want to understand that what is this? What do we mean by neurodiversity? So it's basically the difference in the way people's brain function, process, and learn information. It's just that different people are processing it differently. Individuals have average or above average IQ. So, we generally think that you being a neurodiverse individual has a direct impact on your IQ. You might have a below average IQ, but that's not the case. That's a very common myth that we come across. It's a lifelong condition that runs in families. Access to accommodation and assistive technology, which is available in abundance right now, helps individuals to excel through their lifetime. Again, as we saw and we spoke about on the earlier slide, it's an invisible disability, and it can be often diagnosed through psychometric testing. Unemployment and underemployment key challenges given that not a lot of support is provided, and to even begin with, individuals are not screened often. How do specific learning disabilities manifest? We would want to understand. So dyslexia accounts for at least 80% of all SLDs, and over here is a visual representation of how a text might be perceived by a dyslexic brain. So when they're looking at something that is written, it's often moving, the letters are often interchanging, which makes it very difficult for them to gather the information through looking at something that is in a written format. So this is how it might seem, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and it's very overwhelming. Moving ahead, dyscalculia is present in about 5% of the population. So again, it relates, it impacts your maths, it impacts your ability to do basic calculation. There's a lot of overlap in numerics, symbols, and thus it makes difficult to perform, especially when it comes to maths. Dysgraphia impacts the writing. It's diagnosed in childhood and often affects a person's handwriting ability and fine motor skills. So again, it's a representation of how a sentence might be written down by somebody with dysgraphia. So here, again, a quick exercise. I would just like anybody to go to maybe read the first line that is there on the presentation. Any one of you, just like quickly try and read maybe the first five uh, words or the first or couple of sentences. Anybody? You
Yes,
can
ma'am.
just,
I proceed.
yeah,
We
sure,
begin
sure.
our trip. Uh, whether I have to read out as such or
Yeah, you can just write, read what is visible to you on the screen.
okay. We uh, begin our trip at a familiar place. A double like your ham vibe. Uh, uh,
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you, sir. Trying
TI.
to,
Yeah,
please
yeah,
continue.
yeah. It is very tough, ma'am, to read out it.
Yeah,
Type contains. Say, I'm struggling, not able to read out continuously.
thank you.
Certain words,
Thank you
I'm
so
able
much,
to
sir.
read out it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for trying. So again, it is very difficult to just read and make sense of what is written on the screen. It's absolute gibberish. But when I look at what was intended to be read, this is what it is. So often, what is written and how we perceive, that's the sort of stark difference there is in terms of comprehension. But given that if I read this text, it will be perceived better by a lot of us over here. Then again, this another one, reading the color and not the word. So anybody, just like any one of you can quickly volunteer. I'm asking you to read the color and not the word. The color in which the word is written is something that has to be read.
Purple.
Yeah, ma'am, go ahead, please.
Okay. Purple.
Next, gray.
Blue.
Next, red. Next, yellow. Next, light blue. Next, black. Again, next, light black. Red, brown, dark blue, yellow, purple.
Thank you so much, sir. So if you see, it is also something that while you're reading and all of that was correct, it takes time. It takes a little bit time for us to process as compared to if we were to read the word over here. So again, what I'm trying to help everybody realize and understand is that how anybody who's a neurodiverse individual, the perception of what is written and what is to be read might differ. Like even anybody without SLD might just like read the word and not the color, or read the color and not the word. So it's again a visual representation of something that is being perceived and might differ from person to person. Then we just talked about how language can be perceived and processed. Now we will move a step higher to what can impact and how it impacts the executive functioning of people with SLDs. Poor self esteem. They're often judged on the basis of their IQ, and that comes from their ability to read and write. And this often sparks a lot of, emotional stir and frustration among them. There's a gap in the oral and the written performance. They might be wonderful communicators and storytellers, but very poor in their writing skill. They often face a memory challenge. Can we forget tasks and deadlines, especially when there's an overstimulation of instruction at once? The processing is slow. They generally take longer to process information, reading and writing. And we had a few examples of why does that happen. Then they're very sensitive to overstimulation, which most of us are. Here, they might be a little bit more sensitive. They struggle with concentrating due to movement, sound, light, and that is again a common distraction which makes it sensitive for them and their processing of what is being imparted. They have and face a lot of difficulties in planning. Dyslexic often struggle with time management, which impacts their ability to plan tasks and manage deadlines. Having said that, dyslexics are very resilient. With the right support, they find ways to cope and succeed, like all of us. Given the right support, we'll always find a way to cope and succeed. And the same follows for dyslexic.
I was a cheater in class, and I'll tell you why. Because in math class, for example, the teacher would put up the sum on the table, and I would work it out in my head and have the answer ready with me. And when she would ask me, or he would ask me to show the working, I wouldn't have it, right? So they always assumed I copied it from my peer sitting next to me, and then the peer said, "No, I got the wrong answer." So this guy's figured it out in some way or form. So you went through that a few times because our brains just think differently, and we tend to understand what is being said before the other person is finished saying what they're saying. And that becomes very unnerving. I didn't know my ABCDs till the 5th grade. The only reason I could write my name was because there was another Kunal in my class. He wrote it, I memorized it, and I simply copied it. It was as simple as that. In the younger classes, I would sit at the back. So by the time the class finished reading the chapter twice, I had memorized it. So I would just pick up on where the person dropped off and recite from my memory. My sister started her computer class in the 8th grade, and I was in the 5th. And I got intrigued by the fact that she was typing something on this electronic device, and it was doing something magical on the screen. And I picked up on that, and I started sort of spending my breaks in the computer lab, bugging the teachers and the assistants to teach me what they were doing. By the time I hit my 7th grade, I was actually doing 10th grade level programming and college school projects, and that's what became my go-to thing as an out for my lack of success in academia. And the school encouraged it, my friends encouraged it, and that's when I decided right on in my 8th grade to get a full-time job.
So again, this is a very beautiful video about Mr. Kunal Jhunjhunwala, who was not able to read till 5th grade. And today he's the founder and MD of Airpay Services and is one of our panelists present between us. So we are going to dive and talk about these success stories, which are very important for us to identify. And coming to this another slide, this is a slide which is very beautiful when it comes to representation of the dyslexia power in our lives. So we have Albert Einstein, we have Thomas Edison, we have Alexander Graham Bell, we have Henry Ford, we have the Wright brothers, we have Steve Jobs, and then we have Bill Hewitt. These are the people who created things like using. So today, if you just sit and look around, maybe your laptops, maybe the screen, maybe the light bulb in your room, you will understand the very basic things around you which are key to a very smooth functioning and processing in our daily lives have been invented by people with dyslexia. So that's the kind of power it stimulates in our life right now. Coming to this stat, 40% of these self-made millionaires are dyslexic. We're talking about IKEA, Tesla, Ford Motors, Walt Disney, The Body Shop. Then we have Charles Schwab's, Tommy Hilfiger, IBM, CNN. So many things around us right now that have been made by people with dyslexia, and they occupy 40% on the chart of these self-made millionaires. And coming to the edge we're talking about that they bring with them. How does a mind that can't process language manage to make such an impact in our daily lives? This is a beautiful quote by Mr. Richard Barson, founder of Virgin Groups. I simply wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't dyslexic. In the real world, dyslexia can be a huge advantage. Many people with dyslexia have great imagination, creativity, and problem solving skills. So, again, the key to that edge is the problem solving skills that come with people with dyslexia. And moving to the dyslexic edge. That is what we call it. Global studies have shown that the percentage of students with dyslexia in the fields such as engineering, art, and entrepreneurship are over twice the percentage of individual with dyslexia in the general population. Now, having understood the kind of edge they bring along, the kind of percentage of these students that are there existing around us, it gets us to this very grave need of them in the right way. They have exceptional visualizing skills. They're often very innovative. They're excellent communicators. Their reasoning skills makes them see the larger picture, which helps them connect with the masses and come up with these amazing problem solving ideas. The top universities globally are attracting SLD students, and dyslexia is so common in MIT that it is extended to be known as the MIT disease. We have 5% of people in NASA currently who are dyslexic. So we have universities around us who have identified this edge and are all there supporting them, making sure that our lives are made smoother as and when we proceed. And what are we doing as a country to tap into this critical resource pool of dyslexic thinkers? There's immense that has been happening around us. Right of Persons with Disability Act 2016 formally recognized as a disability in India for the first time in 2016. So now SLDs are formally recognized. It mandates 5% reservation of PWDs in government and government aided institutions. Our new education policy has mandated that children with disabilities, including those with learning disabilities, should be enabled to participate fully in regular schooling from the foundational stage to the higher education, making sure they have equitable access to quality education, and that's a brilliant start. Universities and colleges will thus be required to set up high quality support centers to support SATG students to transition to higher education. So we are looking at a time where we are ready, we are there, we are talking about support and making sure that people with SLDs come up with these innovative ideas. Talking more about the NEP 2020 steps to be taken by the government, they are earmarking suitable funds for the education. They're setting very clear targets for higher gross enrollment ratio. They're providing more financial assistance and scholarship in both public and private higher education institutions. And they're conducting a lot of outreach programs on higher education opportunities and scholarships so that the people, the students with SLD, understand the kind of opportunities that are available for them and the support that helps them reach there. We're also looking a lot in terms of the government when it comes to technological tool for better participation and thus better learning outcomes. Steps to be taken by all national higher institutes. We're looking at more financial assistance and scholarship for these students. Conducting outreach programs is again a very important thing in terms of sensitization and awareness, and make a admission process and curriculum inclusive. So this is a very important part where it is very important that we make sure that the admission processes are inclusive for at least these individual students with SLT to penetrate through the higher education system, and then have a curriculum without compromising the rigor that makes sure that no learning outcomes are compromised. Ensure all buildings and facilities are disabled friendly. Develop a bridge course providing counseling and support. Ensure a lot of sensitization in terms of the
Hello,
people on the campus. Yeah.
ma'am. This is Sachin Kumar.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I am Sachin Kumar from Pondicherry. I have one queries about cross enrollment ratio.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Sir, is it okay to take the questions towards the end?
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry to disturb you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can put it on the chat and we'll just proceed towards it towards the end.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much with coming up with a query.
Okay.
And getting back to steps to be taken by all national HAIs, are strictly enforcing all no discrimination and anti-harassment rule. Again, a very important part for having smooth inclusion, and develop institutional development plans for action on increasing SEDS participation. Then we are going to talk about the directions of the regulator, starting with UGC guidelines. They have talked about listing needs of an assisted transition from school to college and graduation to post graduation. Transition is always difficult for everybody, therefore, more assistance required with students who, uh, who have SLDs and other disabilities, recognition of SLD needs and support. So here we're talking about specifically recognizing the needs and support that is required for people with specific learning disabilities, which is in terms of reading, speaking, writing, spelling, and maths. Provide assistance with oral and written material. Pedagogical advancement in terms of multisensory learning and assistive tech-based learning. Breaks during learning, curricular accommodation with subject, assignment choices, exam evaluation. So we are looking at a holistic approach. Coming to the guidelines by AICT, there's AICT's Professor P.P. Chakraborty Committee on Inclusion of Students with SLD in Higher Education. Recommendations are accepted and in the process of being implemented, and this is that is identifying the support that is required for the inclusion from end to end. This is an exceptional set of recommendations. Circulars mandate exam support and accommodation such as scribes and compensatory time. Guidelines and directive for inclusion during online and distant learning classes that focus on better learning outcomes. And right now, the NIRF allocates 20 points to outreach and inclusivity, which is a very good way of positive affirmation in terms of getting all of us ready for this inclusion, especially the institutes. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the struggles of transitioning to higher education institute from a perspective of a student. On-campus life can often need a lot of support and can be difficult. It becomes difficult for a child to self-advocate or disclose because they're often met with bullying, rejection, isolation, and this is something which creates a lot of negative impact, be it any kid. So, and then moving to a life where they have to manage a lot of daily tasks independently becomes difficult for them. When we talk about their academic life in higher education institute, coping in the classroom in terms of reading, writing, note taking, etc., is sometimes very difficult and pressurizing. Keeping the timelines that they have to abide by, doing their academic planning, working towards tasks such as submissions, exams becomes very overwhelming. And there's always a pressure that they have and struggle with in terms of balancing their academic college life. And we move to emotional well-being, which is something that impacts development and life ahead a lot. There's a lot of low self-esteem and risk of depression when your environment is so overwhelming, when you're met with rejection, when there's some sort of isolation that you feel, often results into this. They're more than often overwhelmed, and this happens with all the students, at least in their initial years, that you're so overwhelmed by your new environment. Therefore, there's a little bit of more overwhelming feeling or emotion for neurodiverse individuals. And then we have a lot of peer pressure, high level of anxiety, and risk of overstimulation, given that you have to manage, balance, and also learn a lot in your new environment. Here's just a small video by Miss Kate, who's the president and founder of Maharashtra Dyslexia Association.
Rohit was one of our early entrants into higher education. He has significant difficulties with reading and writing. The admissions committee at the college was worried whether he would be able to manage the multiple flight of stairs to his classroom. But in reality, he actually found it difficult to navigate new schedules, new systems, keeping up with his lectures, getting to his classroom on time, finding his classroom, making new friends. The list was endless. The first day he went to college, he went to the library to get his library cards, and he was pulled up for his illegible handwriting with the comment, "This is what happens when we have to fulfill quotas in it." Rohit struggled through the first term. He was quite miserable. He spent as little time as possible at college, and it was only regular, intensive counseling that kept him on track. His exams came along, the first term exams, and he had discovered that he'd been given extra time to finish his papers, but the seat in the hall had to be vacated because the next exam was scheduled immediately after. And he was describing this to his counselor. He says, I felt like a worm. Everybody was standing in the corridor and discussing what to do with me. The principal came along and asked what was going on. And he took a different view. He pulled up the staff for not having made adequate arrangements. And he took Rohit with him. I'm going to describe this in his own words, which he told us about later. He said, "Ma'am, he took me to his own office. He sat me down at his desk. He made space there for me. And he told me to finish my paper, take as long as I wanted. And he said, I'm sitting outside making phone calls. Don't worry, nobody's going to disturb you here." What a validation. This validation really changed his life at college. Suddenly, he was able to advocate for himself. He dived into campus activities, took part, joined some clubs. Ironically, in his last year at college, he took over a student newsletter as editor, and he made so many changes and made it so innovative that it won several awards.
Again, through this, we just trying and understanding that one validation in your students' journey is when there's so much going in terms of transition. How can it actually push you to achieve your maximum capability? That one solid validation can change your life. And therefore, that validation can often and only come from a place where you can understand that what a person is struggling with, and how to make sure that they provide with the right kind of support, so that that one shortcoming does not actually compromises with the outcomes, with the results, with the innovation that you're capable of as a student. What can we learn from our global leaders? So we are looking at institutes and how they're sort of creating the support system in their own campuses. Moving to MIT. MIT has a disability and access services offices that works towards the inclusivity of students, faculty, and also the visitors with disability. They ensure equal access for students with disability while upholding the integrity of MIT's program and services. They have counseling support that ensures advocacy, reasonable accommodation, faculty capacity building, and help managing conditions and tutoring. Then we move to academic support. There's alternative exams. We have extended times, readers, scribes, and reduced distraction setting, clarification of exam question. So here we are just supporting them, and there is no compromise that any of us or any of these institute is doing when it comes to the rigor. Material in alternative formats are given, which is electronic textbooks, audio material, enlarged course materials, just to make sure that from an individual to an individual, whatever is perceived the best by your brain is provided to you. Instructed note takers are there for the support. Assistive technology is something that is currently there in abundance, and MIT ensures that the academic course material is accessible using these assistive technologies, and also there's a lot of consultation in terms of what is to be provided, what are the options given the kind of disability you have. When it comes to research, and there's a lot happening in terms of research, we are growing, we are understanding more, we have more subject matters that we can understand. The McGovern Institute for Brain Research, we are looking into brain imaging, cognitive neuroscience, computational neuroscience, genome engineering, neurotechnology, dyslexia and reading interventions, the role of socioeconomic factors affecting the treatment. So there's a lot that is done when it comes to a 360-degree approach of not only assisting, supporting, but also understanding how to update that support. Moving to Yale University, the Yale Center of Dyslexia and Creativity, YCDC, looks into accommodations, assistive technology, research, uh, and they also focus a lot on documenting success stories, and that further leads to advocacy and awareness. So it's very important for us to document these success stories to make sure a lot of kids can come out of their shells, talk about the kind of support they need, so that they understand that with the right kind of support, also for our educators to understand that with the right kind of support, how they can push the excellence that is within their students. The campus support is there in terms of students and faculty. There's a support community beyond exists. Accommodation starting with admission offering tailored support, remediation, intervention based on specific needs are something that they look into. When it comes to academic support, there's a lot of faculty sensitization, classroom lecture recording, and exam accommodation, and also availability of tutors. This is something that is very important. The other thing that I would want to highlight is waiver of foreign languages. So your curriculum is often adjusted accordingly, which I think is it's a very great kind of academic support that is provided. Moving to assistive technology, there's Shewit's Dyslexia Screener. So more than often we realize, I have known people who once reach into higher education and a screen realize that they also have certain kind of disability. Uh, Specific learning disability is there, and that is also something that they that is screened and is diagnosed at that stage. So it's important that we have such screeners. There's note taking in form of speech to text and text to speech. Then research. YCDC has a strong research base which has studied interventions in dyslexia, conducted longitudinal study as well as neurobiological study. This is very important to understand the trajectory of a person with SLD, with dyslexia, and also understand that, you know, how things change, what is the kind of support that can be customized for an individual. Now we'll hear from Dr. Sally from Yale University. She's the co-director for Yale Center of Dyslexia and Creativity.
And I think what I've tried to do is inform the faculty of what dyslexia is. No matter how bright or accomplished or educated people have outmoded views of dyslexia. So to work with the faculty at conferences individually. And that's when you find out member of the faculty are dyslexic. And I think we are very, very fortunate that at Yale, that people who are in administration have been very, very supportive. For example, at our Yale Center, we, anybody that thinks they might have trouble learning or have dyslexia are referred. It's amazing what different stories they have and what different beliefs there are about dyslexia. So we try to speak with the faculty, have them understand, and what people were just saying. I mean, one of the things, for example, is learning a foreign language. We were seeing so many students that were working so hard, students who were dyslexic, on their foreign language requirement, and they weren't succeeding, and it was taking their time from courses they could succeed in. So very fortunately at Yale, I was able to work with people at the highest levels and suggest that maybe we can have a partial waiver of the foreign language requirement so that people could take a course in English, but based on helping you to understand the country, the culture.
So this again over here, what we're trying to understand is that how these institutions are pushing and creating these accommodation where they want the best learning outcomes, given the alternates that can support the students have those learning outcomes in the best manner. We're talking about Stanford University, Office of Accessible Education and Schwab Learning Center, SLC, guides the undergraduate and grad students to become more efficient learners, nurtures student and staff communities, and integrates their goals. They also streamline and advocate for accommodation for students with SLD. They offer consultation and personal learning profile building to students and also learning coaches. So they are trying to create more efficient and independent learners, and that is where the counseling support is focusing. When it comes to academic support, mediating between faculty and student, again something very important, to let the faculty know the kind of support the student is looking at, and also letting the student know the faculty that exists to help with to support them better, modifying learning environments and policies regarding attendance, assignment, and exams. Again, we're talking a lot of accommodation that is making, training the faculty in UTL. So they make sure that by being in the same space, they're catering to the needs of all the students in their class with various disabilities, no disabilities. Then coming to assistive technology, consultation on assistive technology option, which is an individual to individual basis, make assistive tech available for students and faculty both. And this is something that is that is very important. We talk a lot about assistive technology in terms of students and how they can learn better, but also we need to look at faculties and this assistive technology and tech, how they can help our faculties deliver better in the class, making sure that the learning is important on everybody in a more absorbable manner. Then the university also conducts a research program, reading and dyslexia research program, that again dives deeper into people with dyslexia. Then we have Ashoka University. They have Office of Learning Support, which is working towards the inclusion of students with SLDs in Ashoka University. The office works with the individual to arrange a case-by-case accommodation, which is very fair. It's often unfair to believe that all the kids might have similar needs, and therefore, in spite of having and providing that assistance, it might not result into the best outcomes. Streamlining the accommodation with faculty, training the faculty, and coordination between the faculty and the students, and a lot of remedial supports to make sure that the students are at par. Their academic support offers students with accommodation, accessible learning material, exam accommodation, and a lot of bridge support. In terms of assistive technology, something that has come very handy is speech to text and text to speech, and this is something that is actually changing the way of how learning is imparted and absorbed by students. Then there's a quick video from Miss Maria, Learning Support Coordinator from King's College.
It is the key, basically. Being able to design a curriculum that is inclusive is that where we all kind of strive. And I guess that at a university, it can be difficult because it is really engaging a variety of academics, a variety of courses, and they all have different challenges. But for example, starting for exams can be really difficult for neurodiverse students, and the writing and the time pressure and so on. So even in changing the way that assessment is done and providing kind of a different way of assessing, not just one way, but so for example, allowing people to show what they know in different ways. And it could be by writing, it could be by presenting, it could be by debating, it could be, in by portfolio. Of course, it is dependent on the course, but just introducing a different way of assessment.
So this is a very important point highlighted over here, that our exams exist for the educators to understand the learning that is absorbed by their students, and it is more it's very helpful and beneficial for a student to be able to have the alternate means of being able to express their learning, and that is something that I'm sure as educators will help us understand what support is needed, how much support is needed, and also it will be fair to the entire landscape when it comes to the faculty and the students both. Then key areas of intervention that all of us can look into and think more and talk more about when it comes to admission. Admitting students with SLD in the PWD category is something that should be focused on. Accommodation for entrance exams in terms of scribes, compensatory time, preferential seating, and this is something which is very important, and it helps imbibe inclusivity in the very first step when we talk about higher education institutes and working towards inclusivity. College readiness and counseling available throughout the admission process for our students to settle better, to be less anxious about the entire process. Admission personnel should be trained for the SLD needs, which is again very important. Then we work towards scholarship in terms of you know the resources that may require to help them better given their SLD needs. Then we talk about faculty and admin sensitization. Sensitization is required at all levels. Even if you skip one, that might alter the entire efforts being put towards sensitization, whether it be faculty, administration, or students. Training faculty in UTL strategy for teaching and evaluating is again a very wholesome approach. Facilitating inclusive pedagogy and managing inclusive classroom. So this is again, we're looking at a classroom where we are trying to focus on students with all sorts of needs. Classroom support, allowing use of devices, for example, recorder, laptops, etc. And we, in our past webinars, have come across this beautiful example of how we said that if a student has a visual impairment, they have a weak eyesight, we often tell them to wear glasses, to wear reading glasses, and that how it might help them read and understand better in a classroom. So we should be looking at these devices in a similar manner, where this might also help understand, absorb better for a student in a classroom. Flexible and preferential seating, anything that can lessen the burden and anxiety on a student when it comes to being overwhelmed by their environment. Making material available in accessible formats. Again, whatever is being and taught in the class should be available beyond a read and write format. Arranging and allowing note takers. This is something which really helps students. And also, this is something from a point of view where we're trying to make sure that our students are at the pace of whatever and at the rigor that is being taught in the classroom. Curriculum, flexible subject, course choices, again without compromising any of the rigor in terms of curriculum. Modified assignments as opposed to exams, essay reports with lenient deadlines. So here we're just trying to understand the how much has a student absorbed, and there should be more than one ways for a student to be able to present that. Accommodation during exams, again, compensatory time, distraction-free seating is something that helps them manage if there is any feeling of being overwhelmed and pressure to perform better. Creating centers for support, uh, coordination in terms of streamlining the SLD accommodation across the universities, facilitate individualized accommodation liaising with faculty. Now, this is again something we're looking at what the kid needs, what is being provided for, and it should be from a case to case basis. Working towards awareness and advocacy on SLDs and learning diversity, individual tutoring, supplementing academic support. This comes very handy. Career and placement related support. So here it becomes very important for our kids to be able to be employed, be able to be innovators, be able to create these products that come so handy in our day-to-day lives. Then coming to student life, what kind of support can we create over here? Ensuring inclusion campus life in terms of managing an independent living without a lot of pressure. Awareness and inclusion workshop for clubs and societies on campus. Providing campus handbooks and resources in various accessible formats for students to understand the campus better. Access to support groups, a buddy system, and mental health service. This is something that makes them feel more at place. It's easier for them to settle. Technological support provide access to training of assistive technology and mainstreaming usage in the curriculum. So it's very important not only to help people, the faculty, the students understand the kind of assistive technology that is there, but also to imbibe the usage in their curriculum. Workshop with the faculties on campus to understand the kind of assistive technology and how it can alter and make imparting knowledge easier. Technological assistance in terms of time management and schedule management is something that works wonders in terms of helping the students balance their life. And last but not the least, research. Advocating for centers of neurodiversity, research and including neurodiverse scholars. It's very important for a lot of things to come from the perspective of people who've been through this entire life journey with SLD. Accelerating research and assistive technology innovation on SLDs, and lobbying with organizations for partnership and funding. This is something that is a 360-degree support that is something that will help across coordination, student life, technical support, which is research. And this is the last part where we hear Marie Academic Center for Excellence at Brian talk how we can look into changing things.
The whole idea behind universal design is that it's important for every student. And here in the Academic Center for Excellence at Bryant, we also have our support services for our international students and English as a second language students. And as we discuss universal design with our faculty, we are finding that if we focus on just disability, it's harder for them because they see that as a small segment of the population. But if we focus on all students, and we also talk about our English as a second language students, that we can really show that universal design concepts can apply for them and can help them to learn more effectively in the classroom. So for example, even doing something like adding captions to your videos can help English, students who are studying access the material. Also, if we provide note-taking technology, succeed. So in those universal design concepts, and helping the faculty to know that it's not just students with disabilities. And university-wide, if we talk about this, it's much better than if it comes just out of my area, because they don't necessarily see that then as applying to the whole population.
So again, we tried and understand how universal design concepts, help you create these intervention and imbibe them in your classrooms, and they more than often result into better learning outcomes. And something we're trying to focus here that when inclusive classrooms are designed well, intervention for students with SLDs help all students learn better. So when we mean by what we mean by inclusive classrooms over here is that we're trying to design the learning, we are designing the curriculum, we are designing the pedagogy in such a way that it is just helping all and every student in a classroom to learn better. It's not that we are segmenting the learning types in our classroom, we are just focusing on a wholesome, better learning result. Where should we begin? So after this webinar, if you want to go back in our environments and think about, okay, there's so much, how do we begin? We can start with the sensitization of the decision makers, the senior leadership, faculty, students on inclusion of facilities in HAI. That is something that we should look into talking more about it, having this in your day-to-day conversation where you start thinking in terms of inclusion. Develop a holistic inclusion strategy that addresses the students' needs, the faculty capacity, the curriculum design, and accommodation. So the idea is to move in a very holistic manner because there's no point doing a lot in just one stream, just like if we focus on students' need, but we forget to build our faculty's capacity. Then again, the results will be more often redundant than what expected. Then consciously build a culture of inclusion. Again, talk more about it, think more likewise, try and understand more. Talk well has a part of the conversation that happens in our day-to-day life, and encourage admission, track the success stories, and also we should make sure that these PW categories that exist are fulfilled. And then coming to the end of this, we are doing all of this, and our sole focus is that we do not miss out on the genius of the next. We might have another Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Walt Disney in our classroom around us, who just needs that one right push, that one validation that can do wonders to everybody. Now, thank you so much, everybody. I'll be handing this over to my colleague Bhavya to start with our panel discussion.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation, Aprajita. Today we have two panelists. The first one is Mr. Kunal Jhunjhunwala, and the second one is Aprajita, the presenter herself. I will introduce Kunal. He is the founder and MD of AirPay Payment Services and also the co-founder of Changing and Digital Hathi. Along with that, he is also the secretary of ICL Education Society and director of E4ia Technologies Private Limited. He completed his engineering degree in IT from Rochester Institute of Technology and pursued an MBA from Triumph Global Executive MBA. He has 22 plus years of experience in identifying and implementing innovative technology solutions that optimize business processes. Along with that, he has extensive entrepreneurial experience, having founded E4ia Technologies, a digital solutions provider, at a very young age of 14 that helps small and medium sized enterprises identify technology needs and also plan and define project milestones. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kunal. Our second speaker, our presenter Aprajita, who is a neurodivergent. She is a design graduate turned social impact professional with 8 years of experience in socio-economic development, designing and deploying sustainable processes and systems which make significant systemic contributions to society and enable future generations. She has conceptualized, structured, implemented, monitored, and evaluated projects across sectors, including education, public welfare, health, skilling, women empowerment, and retail design. Her journey started with Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail as a designer and soon converged to the development sector as a TFI fellow and then moved to work with the Punjab government on primary education landscape. She led Gautam Gambhir Foundation as a CEO and then joined the Genpact Social Impact Fellowship, working closely with NASCOM and people. She's currently a part of the Changing family, working on the higher education vertical as a lead. Thank you for joining us as a panelist as well, Aprajita. So, my first question to both of you would be like, could you tell us a little bit about your journey with having an SLD? So, we could begin with Kunal and then we can move to Aprajita.
Sure. Hi, Bhavya. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Uh, my journey has been interesting to say the least. As the video earlier said, I didn't know my ABCDs until my fifth grade, and that was taxing. Today, when I say it to people, they think I'm joking and don't believe it. But what helped me through that journey was truly the teachers that I had and the school that I went to. They went to significant lengths to make sure that I did not feel isolated in the school. Neither did they make me feel like I did not belong there. So that was very helpful. As I went to my junior college, as in Bombay, we have 11th and 12th is considered junior college. Uh, I struggled because the college did not understand how to deal with me or with my shortcomings, if you want to call it that. And then when I went back to university, which is Rochester Institute of Technology, the funny thing was it didn't matter because by the time I got to university, uh, the learning experience was all hands-on. So I had textbooks, but I had textbooks, but being in class, running through presentations, doing discussions, etc., enabled me to be part of one, the class discussions, and two, it was a very natural progression. So I fit in like fish in water, right? The exams were all, multi-choice exams, etc. So I didn't really need to spend time and ask them for accommodations because the way the curriculums were structured enabled it right out of the gate, right? So while I struggled with English, English literature, etc., the larger classes that I didn't matter because the way the academics were structured, it enabled me to work, and then that flowed into my professional career, etc. But that's kind of a snapshot of my journey. I've been blessed with with friends and family that have been very understanding of my journey and my dyslexia.
Thank you, and I'm really glad the ecosystem around you was supportive and it helped you with the disability, and it also helped you harness all that you could from it. Um, Moving to Aprajita, could you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yes. So I would say that I've been very lucky that because it's in the family and there have been people before me. So with dyslexia, with ADHD, so it was very easy for my parents to identify it really early, and they pulled me out of the school system. So I did not really go to school. I had home education, and then I started going to school in the latter year because you know how the system is built. You have to write your boards and everything. And I would say it was difficult. It was very difficult to make people understand that you can come to the direct outcome of maybe say a chemistry equation or a maths formula, but it was very difficult for you to put it on paper. So I remember throughout the school, I used to just focus a lot on participating in a lot of events in terms of debate, elocution, and all of this, and make sure that I'm out of school more than often. So my entire focus went there. And then when it came to when it came to me going for my further studies in terms of my college, I was just focused a lot on something which is not a very read and write model. Like I wanted to go to a college, that's why I went to a design college because I wanted this concept where everything is not assessed on the basis of a written examination. And trust me, I did not know about any of these assistive technology that is existing. And post that, when I started my journey as an educator myself, I realized that how important it is for us to identify this. Like, the right kind of push and support can alter your personality altogether. And till date, uh, before joining Change, I have been uh, more than often apologetic about asking for that support from my environment, because I came from a point of view that, how to explain them, they'll have to do an extra bit. And whether it be an interview, whether it be a meeting, or whether it just like, taking notes from a meeting or presenting something, I had always been very apologetic. But how talking more about this has changed the entire thing. Like my perspective and my, acceptance of my own disability has, I think, come to a better stage where I can move forward imbibing this in a better form and talking more about it in like my environment, and also understanding that how when you have one disability you're just so focused on that perspective that you lose track of other things around. So maybe it's just like moving your perspective from one to the other. So that is something that is there.
Right, that's a very interesting journey because you picked a college which was where you were averse to reading and writing, whereas now we have universities in India like Ashoka which are providing accommodations. So that's a bit of a change. And again, you felt apologetic asking for the help and accommodations, and that is the change we are looking to streamline. Um, so moving on to the next question, this is for you, Kunal. Why did you pursue a technical degree when academics were such a struggle? Uh, yeah.
I think he's not able to unmute himself.
Check now. I have enabled access.
This is better. Sorry about that. Uh, so why did I choose a technical field is an interesting question. As my video said, I was attracted to computers very early in my life, right? Uh, I was, and when it comes to computers, it was more about programming and seeing the screen do, being able to control the screen and what it was showing. That sort of got me excited. Uh, I struggle with math, which is the fundamental layer of engineering everywhere in the world. I still don't understand trigonometry or any of it. So while you know, for lack of better way of putting it, I hated that subject, and I couldn't really cope with it. The programming was my saving grace, right? I was fortunate enough that by the time I got to school, they made a distinction between computer science, which was far more intensive on math and sciences, as compared to information technology, which was more about software development, was more about programming, and was a little higher level of skills, or higher level of computer science that was involved. Uh, Again, similar to Aparjita, I chose a school that pioneered in information technology. They still are the leader, which is Rochester Institute of Technology. Uh, they enabled a lot of hands-on learning. So I did not have textbooks. It was self-discovery. I was given a problem and told, uh, you know, go online, find your answers, learn the language. You get stuck, you come talk to us. But essentially, it was read the manuals, read the paperwork, and learn on your own, right? Discover, because there is no right answer. So it was all about self-exploration and development, and that's what worked for me, and that's why I succeeded in the degree that I had. To the extent that I was basically a teaching assistant uh, for the master's program right out of my first semester in junior college, which was incredible, right? And it was a great booster because the professor didn't care about my academic standing. He cared about the fact that I know my subject, and I know what I'm talking about, and I could identify problems. So it did, the school played a big role, and the fact that I had the passion to go after software development and not let my handicap of mathematics stop me from it, right? And I think that's what really matters, and that's what helped me get through.
Right, I'm glad the distinction between CS and IT could help you narrow down your niche. And it's a learning that we should, as universities, enable hands-on learning and be flexible with evaluations and um, let students have that on their side. And we need more professors like yours who were open to identifying your knowledge as opposed to how you were performing on evaluations. So that's a good tip for all our attendees here. Um, my next question is to both of you. So, how can colleges support students with SLDs? So, we can start with you, Prajita, and then we can move to Kunal.
I think when I have to talk about, just like taking pointers from my own journey, I think it's very important to create that sort of environment where a person can own up and talk about it. Like, you can reach out because if you reach out, there's going to be a support provided in return. So that is there. And also, having said that, I think there should be we should just sit back thinking that if somebody was not screened and diagnosed in their early education formative years, they will not be diagnosed later. My cousin was diagnosed once he went for his higher education, and then sort of he could join the dots, and things became so easy. Like he knew how to go about things. He knew what to ask for, and that happened when he was an adult. He was going for his post graduation, in fact. So I think both like creating that environment and also making sure that screening is there. And last but not the least, like creating that sort of support without talking about having to decrease the rigor. And how we saw in our webinar today that we sort of try to push them to do certain things, and that takes the time away from your students to actually do something in which they might excel. So having those alternate options to pursue things that might be difficult, so that you have enough, mental space, you have more time to pursue what might help you do wonders later. So that you're not compromising your own innovative and creative skills, trying to struggle to do something which can always be altered in some manner or the other. So I think these are some things that I would think that if happened to me or if was something that existed then would have been an absolute uh, an absolute wonderful study.
Kunal, what is your take on that?
So I think I'll do the same thing. I'll reflect back on how I got through it, right? Uh, Today, technology has become such an integral part of our life. I'll give you a simple example. Right now, WebEx, I've enabled the closed captioning. So everything I'm saying, it's printing out under the screen in big blocks, right? I didn't have to do anything extra. You have not had to invest anything more to enable this for me, right? Similarly, Microsoft Word, etc. Prompt you and say your spelling might be right or wrong, or your grammar might be right or wrong. So I think technology is playing an incredible role, but that's today. When I went to school, bunch of years back, my school did something very different. I struggled with reading the exam paper because it was a lot of content crunched into a small A4 size sheet, right? And I couldn't read it clearly. So they solved it by simply saying, look, we'll make Xerox copies in enlarged font for me so that I had the time and it was easy for me to read one question, take my time to read it, and then write the answer separately, right? It was at the teacher's discretion to discount spelling mistakes, etc., that I made. But the fact that they were able to give me an enlarged font question paper didn't take too much effort from them, right? That was an accommodation that was very, very easy. And it didn't, and I still sat in the same, exam center, exam classroom as the rest of my, friends. So I didn't feel like I was a special needs kid who needed to be segregated from the crowd. I was part of that community, that same community, right? Glasses solve that same problem because we can't see distance or we can't see close by. So it's nothing special. It's just a way of positioning it, saying, look, take your time, read better, and answer the question because you know what you're doing, right? I think those are really, really simple tricks, or in a traditional language, jugars, that will help accommodate people like us. And it doesn't need too much. It's just about paying attention to that student who uh, is very good at responding verbally, but not in writing it on paper, right? You will find a lot of naughty kids who will actually copy off somebody else and say, I got the answer. But, teachers can pick up on this. It's just a question of giving kids the benefit of doubt, which I got. And I'm a different person because of that. So I think those are the little things that matter. Obviously, as technology evolves, as we start spending on it a lot more, accommodations become easier. But I think just going back to giving an exam paper or a textbook that has a larger font is as simple as an enabler.
Absolutely, both your recommendations align quite well with what we've globally been seeing as trends as well. Kunal, your school sounds like a pioneer if at the time they were able to be so kind towards a student and not form sort of that segregation. And similar to what Aprajita also said, we need people who we can reach out to, or even having a cadre of professionals in colleges to diagnose. So taking simpler steps to begin with, and then proceeding towards something a bit more evolved. My next question to both of you is that both of you happen to be in significant and important decision making roles. So, does having an SLD hinder your ability to perform? And how do you manage to balance your struggles and strengths? We can start with you, Aprajita, and then we can move to Kunal.
I think talking about my how do I struggle with certain things. So I have sort of created my own hacks. Time management does not come easy to me. I'm solely dependent on these multiple alarms that I have on my phone. So I sort of like put everything in a time chart and try to do that. That is uh, so a lot of text is very overwhelming, and when you're working research and everything, there's just so much that you have to read. But again, like there's so much of assistive technology in terms of text to speech or enlarging the font that it made sort of things easy for me. So I don't think so that I struggle with any of those anymore because I know how to go about it. And if I would want to talk about my strength, I would say that my I'm like my empathy has something that has really helped me come up with like solutions. So for me, it's very like I think in terms of like there's always like maybe how do I say an animation strip going in my head when anything is being told. So for me to be able to take that download in that animation format, and for me to be able to explain it to somebody becomes easy. So that is something that has really helped me. And I think combine that like I take pride in being able to solve problems, simplifying them and then solving them. So I think that is something that I would say exists there because of my SLD, and that is something that has helped me. Dyslexia has helped me become more empathetic. Like I can feel more, and I can understand in a different and a more simplistic way. So if you would ask me, if you give me a download and if you try and say that go and explain it to a bunch of kids, I'll be able to do that. So and the thing is that now I'm aware of it is something that makes me very happy about.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a very personal, insightful comment on the question. What about you, Kunal? How does that play out?
So Bhavya, it's a new day every day, right? You face the challenges as you go along, but there are certain things that I've done. As was stated, uh, simple things like drawing it out rather than just talking always helps break down the problem, right? So I'm a big guy who keeps lots of paper or a whiteboard around at any point of time. So any discussion is as much as a verbal conversation, as much as drawing things out, right? It helps. It definitely helps. And this is not because I'm the founder of my company. Even when I was a junior intern, I would do the same thing. It helped me break down the problem, and my boss would think I am reinforcing to him what I'm understanding. So it actually worked better for me rather than against me, because they thought I was taking notes and helping them. I was paying more attention. So that works. The one thing that I struggle with today is, for example, numbers, right? As I'm in the financial space, I deal with numbers on a daily basis. My business is all numbers. I have told my team, for example, when you send me Excel sheets, make sure that all the numbers have commas, with them, round off the numbers. Don't give me those, 10 basis sort of numbers when not relevant. Uh, Let me focus on the big picture. I don't care if it's a transaction was done of 93 rupees 23 paise. What I care about is the 93 rupees, not the 23 paise, right? And if it's a large number in crores, put the comma so that I'm able to interpret them quicker, right? Part of that is technology enabling it. So I think it's a combination of communicating appropriately and naturally sort of growing your way of functioning to accommodate your thinking, right? So I think that's what's made a lot of difference. And it works really well, because and this hack, it's like a working hack. I go into client meetings and I'll tell them, look, can we just draw this out and make sure that we've understood this correctly? And they look at me saying, really, you want to do that? Because it gets clarity to them, right? And that's just human nature. For me, it's dyslexia that needs the clarity, or that's causing the clarity. But with the client, it's me being more involved, right? It's a very crude thing to say, but it works, right? And I think that's what helps us work better.
Right, those are both very interesting perspectives on how both of you sort of converge at illustrations, drawing, or an animation to solve the problems, and also how both of you um, have come up with solutions for your individual struggles. Uh, so my last quick question to you guys is, what are three things you would advise students and faculty on inclusion of students with SLDs? So we could begin with Kunal and then we could end with Aprajita's answer.
Sure. So I don't know in what order to go in, but for students, I would just say speak up, right? If you're struggling, it's not just about SLDs. It's generally if you're struggling with something, speak up. And if you found a hack of how you can solve for that problem, speak up and go talk to your teacher about it, right? And on the flip side, I would tell the teachers, listen to them, listen to your students. Not all of them are trying to be smart or take a shortcut. Some of them are genuinely there to learn, and they want to grow, right? Just pay attention. If there is a student that's not performing to their potential, uh, talk to them and figure out how to exploit it and how to get them to reach that full potential. It could be giving verbal exams. It could be a larger font exam sheet. It could be giving them notes from the smartest kid in the class because they're not able to make those notes. uh, just pay attention to all of us, right? It's not just about the smart kids. And I'll give you an example. I'm not tom-tomming myself. Uh, Two of the smartest kids in my class when I went to school or to college, we all knew they would do great things. But today they're struggling in their professional careers. While I'm running a fairly successful organization, with 500 colleagues of my own, right? And I was the failure. I was the tail end of the class, and they were the leaders in the class, right? It happened because certain teachers paid attention to me more than the rest, right? That makes all the difference. All of us are not just excuses to not study. That would be my recommendation. That's probably.
That's great. Really, that's a very enriching take on it from your personal journey. Um, Aprajita, we could wrap up with your answer.
So I think when it comes to students, I would agree that talk more, uh, you know, tell your teachers, express that, what is it that you feel, what is it that's hampering, this entire learning process. And I think when it comes to our educators and faculties, we can just start talking more about it. Like, we have these success stories, and we talk a lot about these exceptional people who inventors for that matter that we've been studying ever since we were kids. But we don't talk about it for them as a student, as a child. So the more we sort of start talking about that at a very young age, maybe the kids can also identify that, oh, I have a similar struggle, and that, maybe I should talk about it, I should reach out about it. So sort of creating that narrative, the conversation in a classroom will really help. Uh, Both ends for your teachers also to be able to provide that support, because sometimes we struggle that you also cannot really identify. And other than that, I think we should also spread this conversation beyond classrooms to the parents of the students, because I personally have faced this entire issue of reaching out to a parent where I understand that the kid might have the SLD, but just having to explain them that there's so much support available once we identify it, once we work towards it, once we work with it, is something. So that like sort of shift in the perception, shift in the conversation from the very beginning is then it makes something that is not so specific. It makes it like a very generic thing in you, around you. So I think that is something that we can work towards.
Thank you so much. Both of those are very aligned answers, from creating networks and ecosystems of sorts with all the stakeholders, be it inclusive pedagogy, as Kunal mentioned, teachers paying attention and seeing the outcome in a few years, or making spaces for students to ask for accommodations, and also looping in the parents, as they are also very equal, very important stakeholders uh, to drive the changes. So thank you so much for a very enriching discussion. This brings us to the end of the webinar. Apologies, we've stretched a little bit over time, but we'd like to close with this. I will send our email IDs on the chat if any of you have any questions, or if you want to reach out for collaborations, or even just a simple conversation if you're interested more in what the organization does and works with. So here is our contact. Thank you so much to all the attendees for joining us, even though it's a holiday. And thank you so much, Kunal and Aprajita, once again for carrying the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavya.